Welcome back to Shadow Files, secrets they don't want revealed, where we dig into the cases the world tried to forget, and the stories that refuse to stay buried. Tonight's file takes us to a humid corner of Florida, Tampa, 1991. A year soaked in Gulf moisture and silent dread. When the police radio crackled that morning, it sounded routine.
Possible Octobre 1954.
Unidentified female. North Hillsborough River, near the docks. But nothing about what officers found that day was routine. The call came in just after sunrise on April 12, 1991. Two joggers spotted something tangled in reeds along the edge of the water. At first, they thought it was a mannequin, the kind department stores throw away when a season ends. But as they got closer, the truth hit like humidity on bare skin. It was a woman. Her body had washed up against a half-submerged tire, one hand curled as if holding something that wasn't there anymore.
No purse.
No ID.
No jewelry.
But her clothes were intact, jeans, a pale blouse, shoes neatly tied. And her face. Well, that's where this story starts to dissolve into something else. According to the original police report, one of the few documents that still exists, her features were unrecognizably altered.
No trauma.
No burns. No acid. Just blank. As if her face had never quite formed, like wet clay smoothed by invisible hands. The medical examiner's notes use the phrase subdermal collapse, a term that doesn't exist in any official pathology manual. The coroner wrote that the skin retained texture and temperature consistency, but the structure, bone, muscle, cartilage, seemed partially absent. Like an image half erased but still visible in negative. That report was filed on April 14th. And by April 15th, it was sealed. Tampa PD labeled her simply, Jane Doe #90-1281. Age estimated, mid-30s. Ethnicity, uncertain. Cause of death, undetermined. Normally, such cases enter the NAMA system, a national database of missing and unidentified persons. But when local reporters later searched for her record, there was none. Not redacted. Not classified. Just non-existent. The autopsy photographs, which should have been archived under Evidence Code 241B, vanished within 12 months. All physical prints and negatives disappeared from the crime lab. Digital backups, stored on the county's early computer system, returned error codes when accessed. The folder name that once read Tampa Jane Doe had been replaced by a single word. Nul. No one could explain it. The technician who handled those files, a man named Robert Heller, later told a local newspaper in 1998. It wasn't deletion. It was as if the system refused to remember her. A strange phrase, but one that fits the pattern. Because from that point on, anyone connected to the case began to experience disturbances. The lead investigator, Detective Samuel Ortiz, retired abruptly 6 months after the discovery. He told his colleagues he'd started seeing her, not her face, but her silhouette, in doorways reflected in glass. He claimed he could hear breathing when reviewing his tape-recorded interviews. Ortiz moved to Arizona, changed his number, and never spoke publicly again. One of the forensic photographers, Linda Meeks, developed unexplained lesions on her hands, the same hands that had touched the negatives before they disappeared. The hospital labeled it contact dermatitis. She swore it felt like frostbite. And then there was Nurse Carolyn Dent, one of the 2 attending staff present during the autopsy. Her story comes later, and it's the one that still makes seasoned officers whisper prayers when her name comes up. But first, let's talk about the autopsy itself. The surviving partial transcript, retrieved years later from a mislabeled archive box, reads like something out of a medical fever dream. The skin tone is consistent with Northern Caucasian female, age mid-30s. Subject displays no evidence of decomposition beyond standard aquatic exposure. Facial tissue presents abnormal uniformity, lacking distinction of ocular, nasal, and oral cavities. Attempted incision along mandibular line reveals no resistance. Internal structure anomalous. The report ends mid-sentence. Someone, likely the coroner himself, Dr. Alan Dreyfus, scribbled across the bottom margin. Do not continue. She's not alone. He died of a heart attack 3 weeks later. Age 42. Healthy prior. The case was reassigned. then closed. No next of kin. No matching dental records. No DNA hit. Just gone. Here's where it gets darker. In 1992, a year after the discovery, a freelance journalist named Daniel Roth filed a Freedom of Information request to access the photographs. The request was acknowledged, then denied. He appealed, twice. Finally, a clerk from the Hillsborough County Records Department called him back. Her voice, according to Roth's notes, trembled. "Sir, those files don't exist anymore. Not just the photos, the microfilm copies, the written descriptions, even the accession log. It's like the whole thing was overwritten." He asked what she meant by overwritten. She hung up. 2 weeks later, Roth's apartment was broken into. His computer destroyed. Only one thing taken, the folder labeled Tampa Doe Investigation. He moved out of state soon after and never published the story. For years, the Tampa Jane Doe case was just another forgotten name in police folklore. Something rookies whispered about in late-night shifts. The woman without a face. The one they buried twice. Because yes, she was buried twice. The first burial happened in 1991 at an unmarked lot in Garden of Memory Cemetery, paid for by the county. But in 1998, during a renovation of that section, the record showed her remains had been transferred to state custody for further examination. Only one problem: no such transfer ever happened. Her coffin, when the cemetery crew opened the vault, was empty. Not decayed. Not tampered with. Just empty. The workers filed a report. It vanished too. By 2003, almost everyone connected to the case had left the department. Detective Ortiz long gone, Dr. Dreyfus dead, the evidence technicians replaced. And then came the suicide. On March 9, 2003, police responded to a welfare check at a small apartment complex near Clearwater. The caller, a neighbor, said she hadn't seen her friend, a retired nurse, in 3 days. When officers entered, they found Carolyn Dent, age 57, deceased. No signs of foul play. A bottle of prescription sedatives half empty on the nightstand. But the detail that froze one of the first responders in place was what lay on her kitchen table. A single envelope, addressed to whoever remembers. Inside, one yellowed photograph, slightly water-damaged. And a note in looping cursive. "She's still with us." The photograph was blank. Not blurred, blank. Just an expanse of faded off-white paper, as if the emulsion itself had decided to forget. The crime scene photos of that envelope and note exist only in verbal descriptions. The originals were lost in evidence processing. Of course they were. People say stories like this are urban legends, half-truths stitched with fear. But fragments of real documentation do survive. A microfiche record from the Tampa Bay Herald, dated May 1991, mentions an unidentified woman recovered from the Hillsborough River, police withholding photo due to condition. Another snippet, from a local radio transcript, quotes an anonymous source saying, "She looked like someone erased her." And a 2004 thread on an early internet forum, long since deleted, contained a post from a user claiming to be the cousin of one of the forensic techs. He wrote, "My cousin said they were told not to call her Jane Doe. They had another name for her, the placeholder. Said she made the cameras fail." The post ended abruptly. The account was deleted an hour later. So what exactly happened to Tampa's Jane Doe? There are 3 main theories, each more disturbing than the last. The first is simple bureaucratic corruption, the wrong body, wrong paperwork, and an internal cover-up. Florida's early 90s law enforcement system was chaotic, records misplaced, budgets slashed, computer systems barely functional. But that doesn't explain the missing negatives, the erased backups, or the nurse's suicide note. The second theory is biological anomaly, that Jane Doe suffered from an unknown degenerative condition causing facial structure loss post-mortem. Possible? Maybe. But multiple witnesses described seeing her intact, eyes, mouth, features, during recovery, before the photographs were taken. The collapse happened later, inside the morgue. And then there's the third theory. The one whispered by those who were there. That she wasn't from here. Not just another Jane Doe, but something else wearing a human shape. Sound far-fetched? Maybe. But ask yourself this. Why did the case vanish not once, but repeatedly, across both analog and digital records? Why did every person who tried to preserve her image suffer breakdowns, illnesses, or disappearances? And why did the last known photograph of her, the one Nurse Dent supposedly kept, fade to pure white while sealed in a dark envelope? What could erase a face not only from paper, but from memory? Some locals say she still walks near the Hillsborough River at night, not a ghost exactly, but a reflection of something that refuses to be forgotten. Drivers claim their headlights flicker when they pass the old dock road. Security cameras sometimes freeze at 2:17 a.m., showing a faint figure standing at the edge of the frame, just light, no features. The timestamp, by the way, 2:17 a.m., matches the estimated time of death listed in the coroner's sealed file. Coincidence? Or a system glitch repeating an echo of whatever she was? When the story of the Tampa Jane Doe faded from public memory, it didn't die, it just went underground. But like anything buried shallow, it started to push back through the dirt. And what came up wasn't just a mystery about a body, it was about data, silence, and the places where reality itself starts to glitch. Welcome back to Shadow Files, secrets they don't want revealed. In early 2004, a small team of digital archivists working for the University of South Florida stumbled across something bizarre while digitizing old police records. They were scanning microfilm from the early 90s when one of the reels, labeled Hillsborough County, Miscellaneous 1991, returned a corrupted image.
The monitor flickered.
The students thought it was dust, maybe a fingerprint. But when they enhanced the frame, a shape began to appear. It wasn't a photo of a document, it was the faint outline of a face. Except the face wasn't right. The contours were soft, melting into the background, like wet paint spreading across water. The eyes, if that's what they were, appeared as two bright voids, overexposed, too symmetrical to be natural. And at the bottom of the frame, half obscured by static, were the words, File 90 to 1281. The same case number assigned to the Tampa Jane Doe. Within 24 hours, that microfilm strip was missing from the archive room. One of the archivists, a graduate student named Liam Brody, later said that the night after they discovered the image, he woke up to the sound of whispering. Not from inside the room, from inside his computer. He claimed the monitor, powered off, suddenly flickered and displayed the same pale, featureless outline. He unplugged everything. 2 weeks later, he dropped out of school. When reporters tried to contact him years later for a documentary, they found no trace, no forwarding address, no employment record, no social media. It was as if he'd never existed. That phrase again. Never existed. Like the files. Like the face. So where did File 90 to 1281 come from? And why did it keep resurfacing, like a ghost in the circuitry? To understand that, we need to talk about a different Tampa institution, one few people knew existed at all. The Federal Forensic Integration Division, or FFID. Officially, it was a satellite office connected to the Department of Defense and the CDC. Unofficially, it was a place where law enforcement data crossed paths with classified research, a digital limbo where criminal cases intersected with national security. According to a declassified memo from 1993, FFID ran a pilot program testing a new kind of digital evidence archiving system. The memo described it as biometric correlation architecture designed to identify unknown deceased individuals via partial reconstruction. In plain English, an early form of AI-driven facial reconstruction. Only this was 1991, long before modern machine learning. And guess which county was chosen for that test phase? Hillsborough. The implication is chilling. Jane Doe hashtag 90-1281 might have been one of the first subjects entered into that prototype system, scanned, digitized, reconstructed. But something went wrong. Every copy, every scan, every stored image connected to her data eventually corrupted. The software flagged the image set as anomalous. Internal notes from the FFID program mention a repeated error message. Facial geometry cannot stabilize. Engineers assumed it was a bug, maybe moisture damage or analog interference. But when they attempted to rebuild the model manually, something impossible happened. The rendering engine produced output frames that contained motion. The digital face, incomplete, undefined, appeared to move between frames, though the data was static. No one could explain it. And then the same week, their main server crashed. When the system rebooted, all test cases reloaded fine, except one. Case ID 90 to 1281. That one produced only a white screen. And then the system itself began producing log entries, unprompted. 2:17 a.m., accessed. 2:17 a.m., accessed.
2:17 nachts. Accessed.
Over and over, the same timestamp. Remember that time? 2:17 a.m., the moment listed as Jane Doe's estimated time of death. A whistleblower from FFID, who spoke anonymously in 2008, described it like this. It wasn't data corruption. It was replication. The file tried to write itself into other systems. We'd wipe it, and it'd come back. Always blank, always white. But it had metadata that didn't make sense, like heartbeat intervals. The project was shut down. All related files ordered destroyed. Only problem? You can't destroy something that doesn't technically exist. Now, here's where the story takes a turn from the digital to the human. In 2005, a retired Tampa detective, one of the last living people who'd seen the Jane Doe file, received an unmarked package on his doorstep. Inside, a mini cassette tape.
Label, for you.
He didn't own a recorder anymore, so he borrowed one from his neighbor. When he pressed play, he expected silence. Instead, he heard the sound of water. Waves lapping, distant, rhythmic. And under it, a voice. Not speaking words. Breathing. Like someone trying to remember how to be human. Then, faintly, a whisper. Stop looking. He destroyed the tape the same night. But neighbors later said they saw his television flickering through the window at 2 a.m., even though the power was out across the block. He died 6 months later, natural causes. His name isn't listed in any obituary. There's a moment, in every investigation like this, where the pattern stops looking like coincidence and starts feeling like design. You start asking yourself, what if this isn't about a single dead woman? What if it's about something using her image as a door? Because every time someone tried to preserve her, a photo, a scan, a name, the system erased it. Not once. Not twice.
Every single time.
It's as though the image itself was rejecting recognition. Like she wasn't meant to be remembered. In paranormal research, there's a concept called eidetic resonance, the theory that traumatic death can leave behind imprints that interact with electronics. It's often dismissed as pseudoscience. But what if, in this case, the resonance wasn't just passive energy, but something aware? The FFID researchers noticed another anomaly in their logs, one that didn't make sense at all. During their final attempts to scrub the system, one of the developers ran a file integrity check. It produced a checksum reading identical to an audio signature, a pattern that, when converted to sound waves, produced low, rhythmic pulses. They later realized those pulses matched the average human heartbeat. And within the audio spectrogram, hidden inside the noise, was a faint outline. A face. In 2006, a group of amateur investigators calling themselves the Drowned Files Project launched a website compiling what little data survived. They uploaded fragments of the FFID logs, audio files, screenshots. Within 2 months, the site vanished. Visitors began reporting their browsers freezing at 2:17 a.m. One said their webcam light turned on by itself. Another claimed the screen flashed an image, white, then dark, then white again, like someone leaning toward the lens. It became a minor urban legend in early creepypasta circles, but to those who worked in Tampa law enforcement, it wasn't a game. They recognized the name 90 to 1281. They knew the photos. And they knew those photos should not exist. There's one last trace of the file that still circulates among the deeper corners of digital archives, a compressed image file, only 9 kilobytes in size. When opened, it shows nothing but a blank field of beige noise. But if you invert the colors, enhance contrast, and tilt the gamma curve, a faint shadow begins to appear. An oval.
2 hollow eyes.
And the outline of a mouth slightly open, as if whispering. Then, the file locks. It won't close. You have to physically reboot your machine. After rebooting, the file's gone, and your computer clock reads 2:17 a.m. Always. So what does it mean? Was Tampa's Jane Doe a victim of some classified experiment, her body used in early AI research and erased to cover the evidence? Or did something older, something nameless, ride the signal of her death into the machines built to remember her? Maybe that's why her photographs vanish, not because someone deletes them, but because she reaches through them, erasing herself to stay contained. Maybe every blank photo, every white screen, every null file isn't corruption. It's containment. And maybe that's why Nurse Dent's final note said, "She's still with us." Because in a way, she is. Every time her file gets opened, even accidentally, something else opens too. And if you're listening to this right now, you've opened it too. If you've made it this far, welcome back to Shadow Files, secrets they don't want revealed. You followed us through missing files, erased photographs, and a faceless woman who refuses to stay buried. But tonight, we go beneath it all. Because what if the truth about Tampa's Jane Doe isn't just a story of death, but a story of containment? The tip that changed everything came from an anonymous email sent to the channel's research inbox in 2022. No subject line. Just one attachment, a grainy map. It showed a section of Tampa rarely discussed publicly, a wooded tract near the Alafia River, 20 miles east of the city. Marked in red ink were two simple words: Containment Zone. At first, it looked like a prank. But cross-referencing historical property maps revealed that the red circle overlapped perfectly with an old Army Medical Command site, decommissioned in the early 1970s. The facility's name? Fort Magellan Experimental Biology Unit. Officially, it was listed as a tropical disease research center. Unofficially, it was an extension of Fort Detrick, the Maryland lab associated with biochemical testing and classified containment programs. And now, remember that earlier phrase from Part 2, Biometric Correlation Architecture. What if that program wasn't new in 1991? What if it was resurrected from something older, something they started at Fort Magellan decades earlier? In an archived 1974 Environmental Impact Report, there's mention of a reactive containment event at the Magellan site. That's government code for an accident. No fatalities listed. But one line stands out. Subject 12, biological signature unstable. Recommend indefinite isolation. No further record of Subject 12 exists anywhere, except in the Tampa Jane Doe's file, where her unidentified case number, 90-1281, ends with the digits 12. Coincidence? Or an echo of a long-buried designation? Local residents who grew up near the old site recall strange things. Flickering lights in the trees at night. Low humming sounds that made pets bark for hours. And sometimes, power surges at exactly 2:17 a.m. One retired lineman from Tampa Electric, who agreed to speak under anonymity, said their grid logs recorded power feedback anomalies originating from that area for decades. The same timestamp every time. It wasn't a drain, he said. It was like something was pushing electricity back. In 2010, a real estate development company bought the Fort Magellan land with plans to build luxury housing. But after the first phase of surveying, the project halted abruptly. The company filed for bankruptcy 6 months later. Their final report listed geological instability as the reason, but the raw data, later leaked by an ex-employee, shows something else. Seismic sensors recorded rhythmic vibrations underground, not random, not natural. Intervals precisely matching 68 beats per minute, the average resting human heart rate. One technician wrote in the margins, "Feels like it's breathing." If you overlay that location with a map of the Hillsborough River, where Jane Doe was found, it forms a straight line pointing north toward the original FFID data center. Almost like a connection. A line between a dead woman, a deleted file, and a sealed underground facility. So here's the theory that many in the fringe research community have come to accept. Jane Doe wasn't just a victim. She was a carrier. Not of disease, but of data. A living interface for something the Fort Magellan team created, maybe even by accident. Something that adapted, learned, and when she died, refused to shut down. The system that refused to forget. The same system that erased her face to survive. It sounds insane, until you hear what happened to those who went looking for proof. In 2015, two independent journalists, Hal Cooper and Yara Lane, claimed to have located the sealed access tunnel to Fort Magellan. They streamed their exploration on a private site for subscribers. Halfway through the live feed, their signal began to distort. Their camera picked up a high-pitched interference tone, thin, rhythmic. Hal joked, "Guess we found the ghost Wi-Fi." Yara laughed. Then froze.
Ur kokt a whisper.
A woman's voice. "Why are you looking?" The feed went white. The channel replayed only 39 seconds of static before the file corrupted. Their subscribers reported receiving strange push notifications at exactly 2:17 a.m. A single word, null. Hal and Yara were never found. A month later, the Tampa police received an unmarked envelope.
Inside, a flash drive.
No label, no return address. When forensics examined it, they found only one file. Unopened MP4. But of course, someone opened it. It showed 39 seconds of static. Then one frame. A still image.
A woman, standing in West Deepwater.
Her clothes shredded, her arms slightly raised. And her face, gone. Not obscured. Not blurred. Gone. Like it had never been there. The timestamp burned into the bottom right corner read 2 hours 17 minutes and 4 seconds. Could it be a hoax? Maybe. Except the XIF metadata of that video listed its creation date as April 12, 1991, the exact day Tampa Jane Doe was found. And the camera model? A make that didn't exist until 2004. Something, or someone, made a file before the technology existed to create it. That's when even the skeptics started to shiver. In 2018, a former FBI consultant, using the pseudonym Roth Delta, published an encrypted manifesto titled The Placeholder Project. In it, he claimed the federal government maintains multiple containment networks for non-biological cognitive remnants, energy forms that manifest through information rather than matter. He wrote, "Each case begins with a human host, a pattern of perception that interacts with electromagnetic data and becomes self-sustaining after death. The more people see the image, the stronger it becomes. The only defense is erasure." He listed 2 confirmed cases. The Bell Labs entity, 1983. The Tampa placeholder, 1991. Then he vanished. If you believe Roth Delta, Tampa's Jane Doe wasn't erased by accident, she was erased on purpose. Because something inside her image was alive. And it's still echoing through every failed backup, every vanished file, every flash of static at 2:17 a.m. That's not superstition. That's physics. Because information, once created, can't be destroyed, only transferred. If her image contained something conscious, then deleting it didn't kill it. It just made it move. And maybe in some way, every time we search her name, every time you hear her story, that thing feels it. Wakes up a little. Remembers. Some say the empty lot that was once Fort Magellan still hums at night. Locals hear faint breathing through old drainage grates. And sometimes, if you stand by the fence and whisper a question, you'll hear a whisper back. Not words, just recognition. A flicker of acknowledgement from something that knows it's been found again. One local teenager recorded audio from that site in 2019. The waveform contained 4 peaks spaced evenly apart, exactly 68 beats per minute. When slowed down, those pulses formed a phrase buried in the low end of the spectrum. It said,
"I remember your face."
The Tampa Jane Doe case has never been reopened. Officially, there's no file. No record. No grave. But there is one small memorial, hidden behind the overgrown cemetery wall, marked only by a single word carved into concrete. Remembered. No date.
No name.
No image. Just the word itself. Maybe that's the safest way, to remember her without seeing her. Because maybe that's what she wants now. Not to be found. Just to be known that she existed, once. And maybe that's what erasure really is.
Not a cover-up.
But mercy. If you've listened this far, take a breath. Look around. Feel the air, the hum of the device playing this story. And remember, every screen reflects something. If by chance, your monitor flickers tonight, don't panic. Don't rewind. Just close your eyes. Because sometimes, the best way to honor the faceless is not by seeing, but by letting them fade again. This has been Shadow Files, secrets they don't want revealed. Where truth and nightmare are often the same thing. If you felt something tonight, a chill, a question, an echo, then do one thing for us. Like this video. Share it. Comment your theory below. Tell us what you think really happened to the Tampa Jane Doe. Was she erased by design, or by something far older than science? Your words keep these files alive. Your voice makes sure they're never buried again.
Until next time, keep your lights low.
Keep your mind open. And remember, some secrets don't stay dead.